Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful game from a particular moment in their life. This is a special edition of the podcast, a co-op episode, the version of the show where I actually have a group of people on to hear from them about a game that we have all played in the past, present, and potentially future. More of an overview podcast where we highlight one game at a time. Usually gets into a little more of the nitty-gritty of a game than we do on the regular episode of the podcast, and it ends up being a little less personal, but we'll have to see. Maybe that's going to change today. We have for you Co-op Edition 52, Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. Of course, if you've been following along with the series this year, you know that we are covering sequels up to my discretion. Today's a very clean sequel. It's literally the second game in a series. We've also, in the future, later this year, we're going to be covering Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, not technically a number 2 in the series, but a sequel nonetheless, and I've taken some liberties along the way. But yeah, that'll be for December. This is October 2024's episode, and coming up in November, we'll have The Secret of Monkey Island 2, and that's just going to close us out for the year, folks. That's pretty much it for the show introduction. If you want to learn more about us here, Call Me By Your Game or Super NPC Radio, if you're already a patron who gets this audio exclusive episode, as it comes out during the year, thank you so much for your support. Let us know what you thought about the episode, and if you have any comments about Uncharted 2 as well. And if you're listening to this on YouTube or in a free feed some years down the road, thanks for listening. If you liked it, give us a like, maybe subscribe, share the show with a friend, especially if your friend likes this video game. And that's it for the housekeeping. Folks, I'm joined today by 3 glorious adventurers who are braving the world with me to find something special. I've got 3 people today that I'm so excited to have back on the podcast, all 3 returning champions of the co-op format. First and foremost, we have a cute little monster returning from, I believe, 2 co-op episodes, Final Fantasy X and Death's Door. That is none other than Oscar Montoya.
Boo!
Oh, it was cute and scary. Okay. You're already fitting the bill.
Did I scare ya?
A little bit.
Good.
Oscar, welcome back. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. I'm realizing, too, that you have been on a version of the podcast this year. You came on to list your top 10 favorite games of all time a little earlier. So it hasn't been too long, but I am glad to see you back.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for having me. That was such a fun episode, too. It was, what's better than talking about video games, truly and honestly?
I would say nothing. We're also joined by 2 other lovely guests. First of which, I'll introduce a professionally unemployed crow who has been featured on, I believe, the most co-op episodes of anyone. Today will be his 6th. We have TMNT Turtles in Time, It Takes Two, Mother 3, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and SSX 3. It is the great Mike Steele.
Wow, thank you so much, Connor. I was hoping for a second, since I have this platform, that you'd allow me to talk about something really quick. I was born on Halloween. I'm a big Halloween guy. It's my birthday. It's coming up, so Halloween-related things are really important to me. So I wanted to just talk about the new flavor of the Mr. Beast Feastables bar, peanut butter. Obviously, any Feastables bar you get, you can scan the back. There's a QR code. You get entered to win $10,000. And on Halloween, Mr. Beast himself will be giving away $1 million to one lucky fan. So that's just something I really care about. Personally, it's something I'm invested in. It's kind of your life's passion, right? Yeah, it's just really, really important to me. And so I just want everyone to know about the brand new peanut butter flavor of Mr. Beast Feastable bars. So I'll thank you for allowing me to share my passions with everybody on your platform, Connor.
You're so welcome, Mike. And I just, I know you to be someone to use your time and your platforms valuably. So, of course, of all the things you could have brought up in this world, it was none other than Mr. Beast's Feast, whatever the
Mr. Beast Feastable bar with the new peanut butter flavor. Passions are important, Connor.
Yes,
and it almost feels like you're being condescending about my passion. I know you're not, but it's almost like borderline there. So I'm just throwing that out there, like kind of a reality check for you, Connor. Maybe watch your tone, huh?
I'll let that one sit on my noggin. I'll think about it as we go through on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Mike, welcome back to the podcast. Again, your 6th co-op episode. That's over a 10. This is episode 52. You're on like every 8 of these.
I'm on a lot of them. Sorry, I'm eating one of the Feastable bars right now. It's just so smooth and delicious that you can basically eat it while you talk. It's so good. But yeah, I've been on a lot of these. I feel like every time you have a game, wow. Peanut butter is a great thing to eat when you're talking, especially the Mr. Beast.
I'm glad
Feastable
that a
bar.
little part of that backfired, just a little bit.
No, it's going great. Just like the great flavor of the Mr. Beast Feastable bar. Lower sugar than the Hershey bar, lower sugar than a Crunch bar. Find it in any grocery store, any Walgreens, CVS. Anytime you're playing a game and you're like, I need someone to talk about this game. Oh, yeah, Mike's played everything. I'll ask Mike. So I wind up being on not necessarily bad games, but I found that every time you reach out to me, it's never like, hey, Mike, have you played Super Mario World?
Yeah.
And it's always like, hey, Mike, have you played the Brazilian localization of Yggdrasil Saga 2 for the Game Boy Advance that recently got the English fan patch? And I'm like, I have, Connor.
Of course,
and you're like,
I
cool.
have.
You and Jeremy
Yes.
are going to talk about that. Can you be here on Friday? So
Yep,
I
pretty
wind up
much.
on a lot of these because of that.
Yeah, this, I mean, I guess you could argue is one of, if not your most mainline, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
It's
like
a pretty normal ass
popular
game for me to.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not normally on the normal ones.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you here, Mike. This is
Thank
a joy. We have one more person to introduce. It is none other than a silly little goose who's been on, I'm pretty sure 2 co-op episodes. We have The Last Guardian and Death's Door, Courtney Vineys.
Hi, I'm back.
You are back.
Oh,
and
I should have gone honk honk. It's fine. It's fine.
That's
Whatever.
okay. I mean, do you want to try one now and maybe I'll...
Yeah, you can pick.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Honk honk.
You know, I did really like
It was just
that.
neater. It was just tight.
It's snappy. It gets everyone's attention.
Exactly.
Courtney, I'm so glad to have you back, dude. How have you been?
Oh my gosh. Good. I'm really glad you asked me to play this because I was in a little bit of a video game rut. I've been needing to get out of my normal type of games, which are just like small indie puzzle games, or deck building roguelikes. So this was very different for me and I liked the challenge.
I'm glad. You know, you have taken a step, I don't know if I would say out of your comfort zone, but you've definitely taken a step on, like, every time I've asked you to do one of these, I believe it's been, I think you had played Death's Door, actually, before I asked you, or at least toyed with it. Am I correct?
Yes. I think I actually maybe bullied you a little bit into
Maybe that's what it
making
was.
sure that I was on this episode. You had like texted the group chat. You're like, has anybody played Death's Door? And I was like, me,
Yes.
I have. Hello, hi. And I think I like texted you separately and I was like, yes, I have played it. What date do I reserve? And so, yes.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay, so that one, it was already in your bag. The Last Guardian, though, kind of like this, was something that neither of us had ever played. So thanks for being brave and doing it. I did want to point out, too, that I'm really happy that I got both you and Oscar back. Both had you on last on this format on the Death's Door episode last summer. So, you know, as much as I just try to get some buddies back when I can.
Hey, we've got great chemistry, so I can't blame you.
Yeah. That's canon. That's a fact. Re-listen to Death's Door and you'll be like, damn, Courtney and Oscar, there's something there.
Those two
Fireworks.
really click, and the host, what is his problem? Because there's just a missing link there.
It's just in the way.
Yeah.
Wow, he was bullied into doing this episode. You can tell. He is in duress.
I can hear it.
One thing I want to say, because you mentioned like getting out of the comfort zone, is I
Yes.
physically did get out of my comfort zone. I had to I don't play a lot of games where I control the camera, and I have to take Dramamine when I do.
Oh, my
because
goodness.
it makes me. I have really sensitive motion sickness now.
Yes.
This is like a new development in the last
no.
couple of years. So I can't like sit in the backseat of cars anymore. I always have Dramamine on my person. I had to like really, I have a pair of those. I don't know. I lost them immediately. They're somewhere, but those ridiculous looking glasses, like the motion sickness glasses
Yes.
that are 4 things and they have like a blue.
Have you tried a
bottom.
relief band? That thing that
No, I
like
haven't tried
shocks
to
your wrist. It
No.
it does like remember like back in the day when they had those fake things you put on your abs to like work out where it shocks you and they were fake. They didn't exist. It's that same thing, but it's like on your wrist and it like stimulates a nerve that reminds your brain what's going on and relieves motion sickness. Because I went through puberty and got motion sickness out of nowhere, and I've recently been growing out of it, so I haven't had to use it as much. But that band was like a lifesaver when I'd go to like I couldn't ride Star Tours or anything at Universal basically without like with a screen and something moving without that thing. So you should try that. And if you have like some people's jobs give them the whole like you're buying a medical thing so they'll pay for it. It works for those too, which is sneaky.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Oh my God, so much knowledge. Yeah, I'll try anything. But no, that's been like a big issue for me the last few times that I went to like Disneyland and Universal is like after I would ride a ride that had too many screens, like it feels ridiculous to go on Transformers and then just be like, I need to sit down for a little bit.
Well, the Transformers ride itself, it is like an assault on the senses. It's
really,
it's exceptionally, yeah.
It is so, I love it. I genuinely love it so much. It makes me laugh so hard, especially when Megatron at the end is, Optimus Prime at the end is like in your face. He's like, thanks for saving humanity. And you're like, what?
It's a motion sickness machine though. So like you are not wrong. Even people that don't get motion sick can get motion sick on that ride.
Yeah. Thank you. But yeah, I'm just a sensitive girl now, a sensitive woman.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
You got a buddy here. Mike's given us solutions already. I couldn't. What a crew. I truly do love curating these groups. You all have been on the top 10 episodes where you've listed your top 10 favorite games ever, and those groups are very specifically curated. And this one was like, I know a couple people and somebody else. Let's see how this mixture is. And folks, so far, pretty freaking good.
Wow. I agree. Theme parks are great. Let's talk about that instead of Uncharted 2.
Yeah, we'll never talk about it. Speaking of which, as we get into this discussion on Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, I want to begin with discussing each of our personal histories with the game. I will go ahead and kick this off by saying that, strangely enough, I had never touched an Uncharted game before this fall even. At some point last year, in 2023 at one point, there's a retro video game store I like to go to. Courtney and Oscar, I don't know if you've ever been there. Feel free to let me know. Game Realms in Burbank? Yeah? Both of you. Great. I will go sometimes. I'll walk in there if I'm conveniently in Burbank and just browse, and I won't even buy something half the time. But they happen to have I meant to actually have it for the YouTube viewers at home, I didn't mean to have Death Stranding's disc case behind me. I meant to have my Uncharted collection's disc case.
Wow.
Because I have the collection which has the first 3 games on it, whatever that's titled. Anyway, that game was there for like $20. I picked it up. Wouldn't touch it for a year. I have, however,
the Nathan Drake collection, right?
I think that sounds correct to me.
After the 3rd or 4th, he's like,
yeah, I think it's the Nathan Drake collection, which is 1 through 3. I do have experience with this is a game done by the studio Naughty Dog, which we'll be getting into a little bit today. I have experience with some of their games. I have played The Last of Us The Last of Us, end quote, twice. I played The Last of Us 2 once, and last year I played Jak and Daxter for the first time, which will influence some of my thoughts getting into this particular series. So while I had experience with the company that made this game and the series, I had no experience. So I dove in not a game rut like Courtney was discussing, but I had just a game opening between games clubs this fall where I wasn't really playing anything. And I was like, before we play Uncharted 2, I may as well play Uncharted 1 just so I know what's going on. And it went down very easy. I would say that I liked Uncharted 1, having never played it before. Again, coming in with no nostalgia. Didn't love it, but it went down easy, and it was a fun ride. No doubt about it in my mind. And then this game, Uncharted 2, I played afterwards, and I'll get into it in my thoughts, but I think I share the common feeling about this game, which is that I think it improved on every aspect that I could think of personally from the first one. So it was an awesome experience. Played it last month, finished it over a month ago, so I apologize. My thoughts are not going to be the most fresh, but I'm really excited to get into it nonetheless. And I'll say too, I want to play the rest of the series 100%. I have played about an hour of the PS Vita title Uncharted Golden Abyss. I know that Mike knows this because you're a Vita guy.
I'm a big Vita guy. I'm a proponent for the Vita. Yeah, the Switch would not exist without the Vita, and everyone loves the Switch. So by proxy, everyone who owns a Switch loves the Vita as well. So I'm actually one of many.
Yeah, no argument here.
They just don't realize how much they love it.
Yes. I saw, Oscar, you were shaking your head too, talking about, up and down, talking about Golden Abyss. Not to jump ahead too much, but have you played the Vita game?
Oh my gosh, not only do I own a Vita still, but I own 3 Vita games, and one of them is Uncharted.
I love it. What are the other two?
Katamari game and a Disgaea game that I started playing, and I was like, not for me.
Okay, I own two Vita games. One is Golden Abyss, and the other is Mike, you'll know it. What's the creative paper game on Vita?
Oh, Tearaway. I would say Tearaway. Uncharted was, in my opinion, the second best use of the back touchscreen and the camera, because Tearaway is the best use of the back touchscreen and the camera.
Truly a magical little experience. I've gone off.
Tearaway was so good on Vita that the sequel they put on PlayStation 4 wasn't even close to being as good, because that's how well they used the actual
specifically
Vita itself.
Catered to the Vita.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect game for that console, and couldn't be played on anything else basically.
Yeah.
Just it wouldn't compare. But I'm off the beaten path a little bit. I've basically said my very brief experience with the series, and honestly, the co-op editions of this podcast are an excuse for me to play new things most of the time. So I'm so pumped to hear what all of you think. Mike, I'd love to hear from you about your experience with Uncharted 2 from the past to the future.
Well, I mean, I've, in a weird way, Naughty Dog, before when I was young and didn't know, game developers, I knew, the big publishers, I knew the first-party people, but, you thought of, every game on the Super Nintendo as a Nintendo game. When you're that age, you don't realize, oh, Capcom makes games, and Konami makes games. They're not all just Nintendo games. Back before then, I didn't know anything, but in, the PlayStation, Saturn, that kind of realm, I started paying more attention to who was making the games, and I remember
who's
that
Crash's dad.
Yeah, who I want to know more about his past. I remember that my uncle sent me his PlayStation 1 game collection.
Ooh.
And I had a PS1, but only a couple games and no memory card, because at the time none of the games I had needed them. They were fighting games and stuff. It's Bloody Roar and the Cool Borders and stuff like that. And one of the games was Crash 2, and he sent it to me, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. I played the heck out of Crash 1, and I did the exact same thing on both, where I had no memory card, so I just put the disc in and started playing the game, and then just left my PlayStation on for weeks as I, played the game. And then every once in a while, it would turn off, and I'd go, darn. Guess I have to start over, because I was a person with patience and youth and age and time. So imagine saying that now. You could never in a million years. And so I loved those games. So then when Jak and Daxter came out, it was really fun, because they were really pushing modern animation in video games. They were doing things in that game that actual animators were doing in movies. It was getting noticed, because they were one of the they were showing off hey, we're doing things special. We're we care about things. We're pushing boundaries. We are trying to be a developer that doesn't just put out good games. We try to do things that they're a developer's developer, I guess you could say, where you're holy shit, how did they do that? Or whoa, they really spent the time doing that. They started doing that with Jak and Daxter. And then Uncharted 1, you could argue, was probably the least boundary pushing out of all their games, because it was kind of a generic shooter, but it was the story stuff and the how thematic it felt, and almost taking the Metal Gear approach of cutscenes and story first, gameplay second. And that was kind of the problem. So when Uncharted 2 came out and kind of married those two, it was like, I remember it was a big deal because I think I worked at a video game store when Uncharted 2 came out.
Oh, like a local store?
Yeah, I was Game Crazy. It was the one that was always connected to Hollywood Videos.
Yeah.
It was like the bad version of all those stores, like the worst one. So I worked there, and I remember Uncharted 2 came out, and I was like, oh, cool. Uncharted 1 was fine. Like, let's play some more of that. I was like, they got rid of the 6-axis, like, balancing on a vine. Everyone was still a bullet sponge, but it mattered less. It wasn't as big of a deal, and it wasn't just it didn't feel as generic. And even just, like, from the very, very beginning of that game, just the setup of, like, what you're doing and how big and special it seemed. You're like, whoa, this is not like other games, is it? This is, like, they're going for it here. And then that, like, never goes away, because there's plenty of games you feel that in spots, but it like kind of does that the whole time. So I remember infinitely knowing that, like, similar to like Mass Effect 2 at the time, because all these games, all these sequels were coming out in a similar time, kind of like blowing the first game out of the water. It felt very like akin to a Mass Effect 2 where you're like, oh damn, they're taking that first game and really like they figured out where to go.
Yep.
And so I spent a lot of time with Uncharted 2. It put Amy Hennig on the map. You could argue that a lot of people who didn't know names of developers, like I said, that were like casual, like Madden, Call of Duty guys, suddenly knew the name Naughty Dog. So like it did big things, and it was like a good game on a platform that no one gave a shit about, because the PS3 was like having a lot of problems at the time. So like any exclusive that they could get you to care about was a big deal. So like it became that gem where it's like, okay, you own a 360. Find your friend who owns a PS3 and see if he'll let you borrow it, kind of thing.
Yes.
For a lot of people. So I love me some Uncharted 2. I have a long history with Naughty Dog. I've as a person who has worked on video games, I cannot tell you how much respect I have for them as a developer. But then as a player of video games for a long time, I have a lot of respect for them as a developer for playing games too, because you could argue that Uncharted and Last of Us are more similar than their previous games, but they've really run that gamut of like different types of games, and they've been pretty successful with all of them. Outside of me not loving the Jak and Daxter sequels, but knowing that there's some pocket groups of people that really do like the almost like Grand Theft Auto direction they went in. But yeah, love me some Naughty Dog, love me some Uncharted. I played as Drake in, oh no, I'm spacing on the name. What was that Smash Brothers?
Oh my God, the
game?
PlayStation All-Stars.
Yeah, well, All-Stars,
yes.
PlayStation All-Stars. I played as Raiden from Metal Gear 4.
Ooh.
And I played as Nathan Drake. Those are my mains.
Okay.
Won a tournament
to
or
have
two.
a main in PlayStation All-Stars.
I
Yeah,
know.
oh,
Wow,
yeah.
you were a fan.
Yeah, me and dozens of other people had mains, Connor. So
Dozens?
there you go. Me and
Maybe
a
a dozen.
Me and 11 other men.
That's so great. When was the last time, Mike, you would say you played this game? Has it been a decade or so?
It would be when the Legacy Collection came out.
Okay.
When they did like the PS4 versions of all the games. It was
Yes.
after the one with like the mashup of characters that didn't have Drake in them. That game came out, then that collection came out not long after that. I believe it was called the Legacy Collection.
I think
that's when
right.
I would have replayed it last. So a couple of years. I wanted to replay it before we talked, but I'm like, I know this game. I don't need to do that.
Like the
What do we
back
do?
of...
Prepare for Connor? No.
Hey, you know what? No one should ever give me that kind of respect. That would be too much. But Mike, glad to hear from you. Courtney, I want to pivot to you. We got a bit of a preview of your history with the game, but I mean, I'm basically just asking you to spell it out again.
Okay, well, here's the timeline. On Friday, August 23rd, you texted me and asked if I had played Uncharted 2. I had not. And I said, you know what? I think I would like that. I am going to download it. So then you followed up with me a few weeks later, and you were like, oh, I played Uncharted 1 starting on September 16th, Monday, September 16th. You said starting Uncharted 2 tonight. And I said, hell yeah, brother. I had not finished Uncharted 1. I was very early into it. And I was like, fuck, I gotta play. And so I like wrapped up Uncharted 1 and was like, that was a video game. Great. I had, It was totally fine.
Yeah,
Glad
we had like a brief exchange about that, I think, too.
Yeah, I think you
described
described it as like a popcorn, like
Yeah.
totally fine game. And I started Uncharted 2 a time after that. I played a couple chapters and I was like, this is fun. I'll knock this out, no problem. Let's fast forward to Wednesday, a week from today, Wednesday passed.
Yes.
And I was like, I need to finish that game. I was on chapter 3
Wow.
of 26. And so the last few days, and I was going out of town this weekend. So I crammed. I
No
crammed
way.
that game. Yeah, I played it. I finished it last night at 10:47 p.m.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
So it was fun. It was like a really great, my ADHD like really was like, you've got time. And then all of a sudden it was like, got it done. And I think that was a totally great way to play. I remember way more of the story, at least. If you ask me anything about Uncharted 1, it will be a little harder for me. But I can absolutely see why Uncharted 2 is on so many people's one of their all-time favorite list. I was pretty consistent. Granted, I was playing a remastered version.
Yeah.
But I was like, what year did this come out? Like, this was so good. This is not what I thought games in 2009 looked like.
For what it's worth, that was it. That stuff is the stuff that didn't change. It was all just like, I mean, it looked really good, but like the things you're talking about, like, whoa, were games like this? It was like the first one. It was like the one that was doing that stuff. So you didn't get that different of a version, I don't think.
I believe it. I was like, that'd be too much. They'd have to change too much.
Yeah.
So I was really impressed by the art, the scope. I had to remind myself how long ago 2009 was, where I was in life. So yeah, I was pretty blown away. I wasn't expecting a ton, just because, like I said, I'm not like a huge AAA game person. I have played some of the few AAA games I have played are Last of Us 1, Last of Us 2. Also, this game, another game that I love are the God of War games. And this one, it reminded me so much of the God of War games, especially the more recent ones. And I was like, I really feel like this is such a big influence for those games. I think so that was just like a stray little thought from me. But I also, like I said, I love puzzles, and this game had a really good balance of I have to admit, I was playing on easy mode just because I was like, I'm here for this. I'm here for good vibes. I don't need to stress myself out. And I think that was the right choice for me. And it had such a good balance of puzzle, sitting and having to figure out what's going on, and action.
Yes.
And at one point, I wrote this down on one of the pieces of paper that I lost. But at one point, I got a little trophy for a certain number of headshots in a row. I was like, look at me, I'm a gamer. I was like, yes.
I love it. You've got all these lost pieces of paper, something you would collect for your notebook in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. They're in some drawer somewhere. If I were to disappear today and someone had to clean up my stuff, they would just find random pieces of notes,
just scribbles.
15 headshots. What is she talking about?
Yeah.
Never let anyone shame you for being an easy mode gamer, by the way. I am a outspoken, put it on easy mode if it's going to make you play the game as opposed to not play the game. There's been plenty of games where I'm like, the fun I'm having is because I chose easy mode.
Yes.
And I've made games. I played tons of games. I played hard games, easy games. But sometimes the way they tuned it is not the right way for you to enjoy it. So don't let anyone ever shame you for playing a game on easy mode, even if it's a game like this. Ever.
Oh my God. It was, and I had such a good time. I remember just being like, oh, maybe I'll restart it and try and challenge. I should challenge myself or whatever. And then I was like, I should just have fun. The world is filled with so many ugly things. Let me just have fun. Let me play my game on easy mode.
Let me just shoot 25 men in the head in a row.
I know, I did. It was very fun where I could see, because I played medium mode on Uncharted 1. And then I was like, I got to make this easy. I got to get through it. And honestly, I am kind of like, I probably could have gone like a level higher, but that's, you know what? It's fine. I had a great time, and I felt good after. So
good.
Heck
awesome. I can't wait to dive in even more with you. I'm really excited. I'm glad you had a good time. I know sometimes playing a game that we've never played before, like, there can be mixed results. So I'm even more encouraged to have this discussion. Oscar Montoya, finally, it's time to hear from you. What's your history with this game? I understand we might have a fun tidbit to dive into.
Yes, I don't really have much experience with this game as much as I had with the first game.
Yes.
Because back when I was a college student, I play tested the original Uncharted game.
Ooh.
And
like focus group or like QA?
No, like focus group.
Okay.
It was like focus group oriented. It was so funny because they were like, play the game, and then you have to do a diorama experience, like telling us your experience playing the game, which I was like, what?
Diorama?
What do you want us to do? Like,
You know, it's funny. You saying that, I know exactly which company did your focus group.
That's very
100%
funny.
No. I 1,000% no.
Wow. Yeah, so I was like, a shoebox and like just find like collaging stuff. It just felt insane. And as I was just like, why am I doing this? But I was like, hey, they're paying me a certain amount of money and I get to play video games, which I love doing. But my God, I can't even tell you how boring that game was. I was so bored out of my mind. You mentioned this earlier, but that's so like the balancing thing.
That success is balancing.
Oh my God. It was like most of that game. Also, I think they were trying to like fuck around with the control. I don't know what. I was so bored. It was so boring. I was not interested. And to me, it felt really like, this is just like Guy Lara Croft. Like, I don't care. Anyway, so, but you know, I was like, the game was fun. You know, like I wanted to get my money. And I think the best diorama got like an iPod, I believe.
Oh, you got prizes based on
We got prizes based on our diorama. I did not win one because it wasn't very good. But anyway, so I was like, goodbye, good riddance, done and done. The game came out, people like liked it, and I was like, that's a wrong opinion to have. Not knowing that they like improved upon it or whatever. And then the second game came out, and that like changed the game. We all were around when Uncharted 2 showed up and was just like, gaming is like movies now. Like, oh, they are a legitimate form of entertainment now. But I had such a bad experience with that first playtesting, that first game, that I was like, no, not for me, not interested. Then years and years later, I played the first one because I wanted to play the second one, but I'm a big like, I'm not just jumping into the sequel. I gotta play from the beginning. Yeah. And so I played the beginning and I had a good time. I was like, this is not the game that I play tested forever ago. They've improved. They've taken some of, I don't want to say my notes, but in my fantasy, they took my notes and they really listened to me. So they made it less viney and more like actiony, which was nice. But you know, I was just sort of like, okay, cool. That was a nice game. And then I played the second one. And from the first moment, I mean, that train scene, period, the end, I was like, are games allowed to do this? Because my background at the time, I was like fully focused on fighting games and like indie puzzlers. That was like the only language I spoke in video games. I stayed away from any sort of big AAA games. And to me, I was just so impressed by the scope of this game. And I continued to be impressed for the rest of the game, where I was like, whoa, it's a playable movie. It's less of a video game and more like an interactive movie with some incredible camera shots, of huge overarching like storyline, twists and turns. Like I was fully in it. And then I kind of stopped playing. I didn't play the third one or the fourth one. I don't know why. I was sort of just like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. I played the fourth one on easy mode. I played the whole fourth one on easy mode.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have a favorite Uncharted since you've
Yeah,
played?
I want to know what your ranking is, Mike.
Oh, geez. I guess it would probably be. So I have a complicated relationship with the fourth one because I didn't like the changes they made to the
They
shooting.
didn't like your diorama?
My diorama was all about how the melee was more fun than the shooting, so I weirdly played through the whole through four. Basically, if I didn't have to shoot, I was just punching dudes. So I would probably say that it's 2, 3, Vita 4, 1.
Okay.
That would be my gut check, just like right off the top of my head. Because the Vita one is the exact opposite of the fourth one, where it's like, oh, the only things that are fun are the things that aren't shooting, but there's no like fun version of the shooting at all. At least in 4, I could find a version. But two's one of those games where it's just kind of on another level. Like, it really is. Like they all have strengths. I would argue that 3 had better combat. They fixed almost every problem I had with 2's combats, and like you almost forget after playing 3 that like they got rid of the heavy guys that are just annoying and replaced it with like different styles of enemy types. It just kind of made more sense. The gunplay felt better. Headshots had more of an impact. You felt less like the Gears of War meat sack shooting a guy 100 times
nice.
feeling. But then like they were also trying to follow 2, so it had the most sequel-y feel out of all of them. So lose a little bit. So yeah, I think that's probably the direction I'd go is 2, 3 Vita, 4, 1.
Cool. I'd love to get a ranking inside of an episode if I ever can. So thank you, Mike.
I love ranking stuff.
I love it. Well, now that we've gone over, and Oscar, you had completed your history section, right? Did you have anything? Okay, great. Want to make sure I didn't cut you off from something important. Well, let's really quickly set the table, even though we've been talking about the show, for what this game is, just to get a little bit of extra context out here for the listener. Again, folks, if any of the 3 of you want to jump in at a certain point with an important tidbit for context's sake, please do. Otherwise, I'll just monologue for a couple paragraphs. So without further ado, here I go. Uncharted 2, Among Thieves, is a 2009 action-adventure game developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. It is, of course, the second game in the Uncharted series and was released in October 2009 for PlayStation 3. So if you want to make us all feel our age, that is 15 years ago this month. I was a freshman in college when this game came out. And I don't know if I ever saw PlayStation 3 in college. It was a lot of Xbox 360s.
I got married this year.
No way.
So I got married. Oh my God, this movie came out after I got married. I'm old.
You said movie.
I just said
kinda
movie.
is.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It kind of is. We established that it's a movie. Okay.
Yes.
This game, I got married in August of 2009, and this game came out. All right, I'll sit with that. That's
happy
fine.
15 years, Courtney.
Oh, thank you.
And all of this, your anecdote and my context of college is in this paragraph, of course. Set 2 years after Uncharted: Drake's Fortune, which also came out 2 years before in 2007. The story follows Nathan Drake, Chloe Fraser, and Elena Fisher as they search for the Sintamani Stone and Shambhala while battling a militia led by war criminal Zoran Lazarevic, that's how you say it. Yes.
Can I just say right off the bat, an iconic line in the series with last year's model.
Oh, yes.
Like, to me, one of the most memorable lines in gaming history.
And that's from Lazarevic, right? Doesn't he say that about doesn't he say that? Oh, no, Chloe says it about Elena. That's what it is.
Yeah. Are you serious?
I know. I truly, again, I played it a month ago. I was like, wait, who said that? Sorry, I did not need to interrupt you to do that.
No. Elena says it about herself when she's introducing herself to Chloe.
Yes.
She's like, I'm last year's model, meaning, and it's a fun joke, obviously, because she's like, I'm the girl that I was the last girl but also a meta commentary on I was you in the first video game.
Yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. Come on.
It
Plus, if
truly
you're
is.
Team Elena, you're like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
You're the
Yes.
best. Great line.
Right.
Throw Chloe off a roof.
Oh.
Marry Elena.
Yeah. And
Which,
who knows?
I mean,
essentially, yeah.
I'm excited. I am actually really excited to get into love triangle stuff. To continue as well, development for Uncharted 2 Among Thieves began immediately following the success of the first game. The development team drew inspiration from explorer Marco Polo and his expeditions through archipelagos in Eastern Asia. Naughty Dog developed an updated proprietary engine for this game, which runs exclusively on the Naughty Engine 2.0 system. These improvements enabled extensive motion capture, greater in-game cinematic sequences, and an inclusion of online multiplayer component, a first for the franchise, and something that Naughty Dog games would continue to do and eventually not do. This game received acclaim for its narrative, voice acting, graphics, technical achievements, and cinematic quality. It received numerous Game of the Year accolades. Was considered one of the greatest games of the year. Continues to be lauded as an achievement in games all the way up until today. And yeah, the series continued through Uncharted 4, which was the last original game that came out, I believe, that was 2016 that Uncharted 4 came out. And it's been released on two different collections that we discussed, the Nathan Drake collection, and then someone else had named it already.
It was Legacy. I think it was the Legacy collection.
The Legacy collection, yes. Anyway, it's a little bit of additional history and context. Would any of you like to include something before we finally talk a little more in depth about our feelings on the game?
I'd like to call out someone who's not Neil Druckmann. He's the only guy anyone ever talks about at Naughty Dog. There is a programmer named Travis McIntosh. Everyone calls him Cowboy. You don't realize you know him, but all of you definitely know him. And it's funny that Courtney brought something up earlier that is in reference to this guy. So later in the game, there's the jumping from train to train sequence and stuff. That was a nightmare, and that was impossible. And no one, all the tricks you would do in previous years of gaming looked like crap. And he basically invented, he was like a magician. Have you ever seen someone who's really good at spreadsheets and you're like, this couldn't possibly be a spreadsheet, and you're like a wizard?
Yeah.
He was like that with programming in games, and he did stuff that literally other people within Sony, even Mark Cerny hit him up and was like, hey, how did you guys make Drake controllable during those cutscenes, and how did you make the video so uncompressed that it looked like it was rendered the same as Drake? And he's like, oh no, that's just all in real time. This isn't Final Fantasy VIII with pixely Squall running around during a cutscene in the background or anything. And everyone thought they're like, oh well, no, but what it you can be honest, just tell us how. And he did such magical things that they actually had him go around to a bunch of studios, including Sony Santa Monica, who worked on the God of War games. And very conveniently after this game came out, those got much larger and more cinematic even than they had already been, because he was showing them here's how I do all this stuff. And he was visiting basically every Sony first and second party studio, kind of doing the I'm a teen who was a drunk driver visiting high schools talks, except for here's how to make your game crazy and insane without killing yourself doing it.
Wow.
And the things that he's most notable for were, again, the train scene near the back half of Uncharted 2, where you're jumping from train to train, and how it was basically how it stitched itself together to make it as hard as possible for you to feel like you're doing platforming, and so that the game kind of moves with you, kind of like when they stitch music together on the fly.
Yes.
It's so that you're not messing things up when you're in control. He had to figure all that stuff out, and that was a big deal. And then in Uncharted 3, which I know this isn't about, but there's a scene where you're in a tanker that's you're in a room, in a big tanker full of those big shipping cargo containers that are all stacked 12 high, and your ship starts Poseidon Adventure flipping over, and that room starts filling up with water, and everything in it is moving and floating, but then also he had to have some of it happening specifically so that it was still a video game level. And when they made Titanfall 2, the guy that programmed the level where you're going through and all the buildings are being manufactured and you're platforming said he was only able to do that because he knew Travis McIntosh.
Dang.
And he taught him a bunch of the stuff that he then used for Titanfall 2. And it's just like you watch this lineage of this one dude just kind of like trying to push an envelope on a game. And you see that like Uncharted 2 and Titanfall 2 are not close to each other necessarily. So you see this lineage of him doing things. And they called him Cowboy because he wore a cowboy hat. And he'd basically like show up and be like howdy, everybody. I'm going to fix your game. I'll make your game great. So I feel like he is worth shouting out because Amy Hennig gets shouted out a lot as a writer on this game, and she's been a great writer on a lot of games, been in the movie industry for a long time before games. Neil Druckmann obviously became the face of Naughty Dog around the time of like Last of Us and then the later Uncharted games. But McIntosh is like the dark horse guy that like you would not have Uncharted 2 without him, and by proxy, you would not have a lot of big, flashy, cool stuff in games like Uncharted 2 if not for him kind of like seeding the fields and letting all of his knowledge grow out there instead of just like Naughty Dog being like, yep, pretty cool that we did that. Anyway, see you later, everybody. Figure it out. So I feel like he is worth bearing in mind because of how big of a technical achievement Uncharted 2 was.
Yeah, that's interesting because that train sequence specifically, Mike, I remember playing it, and there are certain scripted moments that happen like around the exterior of the train that I was kind of racking my brain, having, basically no programming experience, wondering like, how would you even do this theoretically? Like make this happen? Not even the nuts and bolts of it all, but that's so cool.
Like the scene where you're kind of like sort of higher up and there's the train down below you and you have to jump down onto it before the one you're on explodes. That was like him essentially like performing alchemy. Like everyone's like, you can't do this. And if you did, it would be so specific that it'd be like learning a Mega Man 2 boss or something, right? Like it's because it's so scripted that you have to memorize it, not that the game plays along with you so that you feel like more often than not, you're not accidentally jumping off a cliff and ruining those moments.
Yeah.
That was him.
Dang.
I guess also he did the whole like Drake touches walls when he's near them and reaches for things so that it feels less like a character.
Even more like
autoing themselves through an environment.
Even more like
he also was important to that. But.
Yeah, sort of like subtle details in this game that do sort of grow the, to use an overused word when it comes to game discussions, immersion of like, oh, this character's actually in this world and is maybe considering how they're moving through it.
Yeah, so thank Cowboy McIntosh for a majority of the games that you play nowadays.
Cowboy McIntosh, you already mentioned, Druckmann and Amy Hennig. We have Bruce Straley as well, who I guess was a director on this game, and the music was composed by Greg Edmondson. We can't do justice to the full, development team. There's probably thousands of people who worked on this game. But without further ado, I feel like, Mike, that sort of helps us, unless Oscar or Courtney, did you have anything you wanted to include before I
sorry, I did the mic thing where I talked for 20 minutes.
You're fine. I wanted to make sure I just didn't blow past you two.
No. I mean, thank you, Cowboy. Cowboy McIntosh is GOAT.
Thanks, Cowboy.
I love that I learned something today.
Well, I was so happy when you mentioned and then the God of War games feel very influenced. I'm like, she set me up and didn't even know it.
Oh my God, bump set Spike.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, we are a volleyball team. That's how I kind of look at the four of us. Well, Mike, I think that gives us a perfect jumping on point for the first subject that I'll bring up about this game. And it's something that is undeniable, that is in the first game, but not near this impressive or to this degree or at this pace. And that is just the set pieces in general. The game begins with one that Oscar brought up earlier, and they feel like they don't quit. I think it was even maybe Mike who brought up how you will see that sometimes at the beginning of the game or certain moments. In this one, it's just throughout. Found myself excited at set pieces to come. Maybe Courtney, I'll turn to you as a newcomer to this game. Did you have a favorite like big set piece or like roller coaster moment in this game that comes to mind?
was pretty consistently impressed through the whole game. I think I sort of like realized what I was getting into when we first got to like Tibet and we were sort of on the ground and it was like this war zone. I felt like that's where I sort of like really connected with the game, and really realized like what I was like. I think that's when I first started being like, what year was this made?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I was like, oh, wow. Like, the stakes all of a sudden felt a lot bigger to me than they did. Then, like, I just felt like way more connected. The stakes felt bigger. I loved just the journey and the puzzling your way. I love so much when a game doesn't tell you exactly where to go, but it really lays the groundwork for you. Like, it lets you explore, it lets you like, like look around at things, but then there is like a very direct path. I have a very hard time with open world games. I need to be told what to do. This was great. But yeah, I think when we were first, I believe it was Tibet, when you're on the ground and it's on fire. It's a full-on war zone. That was it for me. I mean, the ending set piece is also amazing, but I feel like it's cheating to say like, the final set piece where it's like, yeah, obviously that one's going to be great. But yeah, I think I'm going to say Warzone Tibet.
Yeah, that one too, Courtney. I don't think it would have been the one that I brought up, but it was one that I felt some of the most like urgency in, and not only to just get through the level because I was concerned both for myself as the player, but also, and it's kind of interesting that they Elena says something about this where I'm like, what have I done bringing this destruction to this village as Nathan Drake, And Elena calls that out quite specifically. So I think that set piece has several strengths going from it, both like a narrative one of the concern for the consequences of your actions versus some set pieces in this game which are amazing. And the worst that happens there is you're destroying a piece of history, which I don't mean to, I don't mean to minimize how important this theoretical history would be.
Yeah, I definitely, one of the notes I did write down and keep because I took it last night was, oh my God, why are they absolutely destroying the remains of an ancient civilization? Like everything, it was just like, there's this, I finally, like that just kind of like finally came to a head for me, where throughout the whole game, I'm like kind of hanging out very aware where I'm like, this is so much destruction. Yeah, it was like this beautiful part of the world and this beautiful history. And then I was like, Courtney, it's fake. Courtney, this isn't real. You're going to be okay. But yeah, they do a lot of, that's something that I feel when I watch Marvel movies also, where I'm like, this is going to be a hassle to clean up. This is, I'm like, no, my God. But yeah, it was, yeah, I liked that line from Elena too. I felt like I was waiting for a long time for someone to finally say like, "Oh no, look what we've wrought upon these people who are just trying to live." So that got a big thumbs up from me.
They included that line on purpose too, because like even before Uncharted 2, after Uncharted 2 became more popular, but the whole like Nathan Drake, world's greatest murderer thing, like became a thing because like this game suffers, I'd argue, harder than most with the whole like ludonarrative dissonance thing of like, what is the actual thing that's happening? Am I to believe that Drake really killed like thousands of men? Or is it like within the narrative of the world, Drake probably killed a dozen guys, but I'm still playing a video game? And then are the cutscenes the only real thing versus that's always been a conversation. Like in theory, the version of the game that happened was the one where Drake never died. You're going to die while you're playing, and that's the idea of the ludo narrative dissonance, is the difference between what actually happened, what you experienced, and what the world experienced. And this game really, really pushes that, because in the first game, all you do is kill people. You just kill so many people, and it's just like Drake is a murderer essentially, like not like killing guys because it's a video game. Like suddenly you're like, oh no, these are humans, and it's like mowing down just like hundreds of them. And so in the second game, they were like, what we're going to do is we're going to have the cutscenes address that more than the gameplay. but we don't want to ignore it. And so we want someone to acknowledge like the reality of what's happening, as opposed to just like, look at that building crumble, look at that antique get blown up, look at this civilization's ruins turn into something for Drake to hide behind so he doesn't get hit by a grenade. Like, they wanted someone to acknowledge it, and that gets more and more important because people didn't think they pushed it far enough, because the bad side of that actually got more spotlight of like, oh, Drake's an even better murderer now than he was before. So that becomes more important, but you can see like the seeds of them trying to like address that and kind of give the player an idea of like, hey, yes, there's destruction, but we're trying to make sure it's not wanton, or that at the very least you think of it as like the villains don't care about it and that's why it's happening, as opposed to we wanted something to explode because that's fun. And so I think it's good that you brought that stuff up, because I think the game does try to address it, and it's good when games try to address that, even if they have to like keep going at it. And this game does that more than most, as far as like what is the true reality of what Drake's experience was in this game.
Yeah, it had me think, this series, it draws comparisons to other franchises. We had Oscar bring up Tomb Raider earlier. Very popular phrase is Dude Raider when referring to Uncharted. I've heard Millennial Indiana Jones thrown around. And Mike, it did have me trying to remember as I see the Raiders of the Lost Ark poster behind you.
It is a laser disc because it allowed. Have you ever hung albums on your wall?
Never.
Spoiler alert: you can get laser discs for like nothing anywhere on the internet, in like used stores. Like, I don't know if you guys have Zia's in California, but those like used record stores places. Laser discs cost like $4, and it's basically like an album version of a movie you can hang on your wall. It's dope.
Man, Mike's tip of the day. No, thank you. Well, I was just going to say that thinking back to Indiana Jones while playing this game, I was like, I know obviously, Indiana kills plenty of people, but it just had my brain spinning on that same subject too. Mm-hmm. It's kind of impossible to avoid. To sort of pivot back to give everyone a chance for like a set piece highlight if they'd like to. Oscar, do you think of one specifically, a set piece from this game?
The one that honestly, the thing that I do want to talk about is, because so much of this game is like nonstop go, go, go. Mm-hmm. We're sort of introduced to the game in that train scene, and it sort of doesn't stop, And for me, a set piece, the biggest set piece in the whole game is sort of the anti-set piece, which is where he's just walking around that town.
Yes.
In Tibet after he gets rescued. Nothing happens. It's just him exploring the town, talking to the townspeople. These kids are hiding.
I loved the chickens.
The chickens.
The chickens were so. I was like, that's a great detail, and also beautiful art on the chickens.
Beautiful.
You guys would love Uncharted 4, by the way. Everything you're saying right now, I think you guys need to play Uncharted 4.
It's the difference playing a game then and now. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, finally. Relaxation. Oh, taking in the scenery. It reminds me of the reality show The Amazing Race, where you're just going and you're just going and you're going to these amazing countries, incredible cities, and you're not really experiencing it because you're just on race mode the entire time. You're stressed about making that flight. You're grossed out because you're eating foods that you normally wouldn't be eating. So you're not really paying attention to the surroundings, yeah? But then once in a while, you stop. Look at this. Look at where we are. This is crazy. And that moment to me felt like the moment in the game where it was like, hey, gamer, shh. Hey, stop. Relax. Put the remote down for a second. Look, mountains. Look, children. Look, chickens. And to me, that was such an impressive display of, look at what we can do now with the graphics. And look, we don't have to be killing someone every single time. It could still be impressive. So to me, that felt like a big set piece, if that makes any sense.
Like restraining themselves without holding back their their like technical prowess.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. And as a gamer, it does something really weird where the entire time, the only times you get to breathe is when the cutscenes where they're talking, and then it like launches you into another set piece, another country, another shoot off. But while I was looking around, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop of like, oh, the Yetis are coming, or like something, you know what I mean? And it didn't. Nothing happened. And so as a gamer, you're like, whoa, I've been trained to act this way playing this game. And the fact that they showed me like, no, calm down, take it in, was actually really cool.
I, in that moment, felt myself fight against my instincts, because my instincts in this sort of game, like a game that is so narratively driven, that has such a critical path that you can follow to what you're getting at, Oscar, like sort of a blazing pace if you want to. I felt myself fighting against the instinct that I'd been operating from throughout most of this game, to just exactly poke around the village a little bit, see what's around the next corner. And I know that there's a bunch that I didn't explore, because as I would poke around, I'd be like, well, there's no way that it continues down this direction or past this little wooden gate. And it usually did. So that was a really interesting opportunity for a breather in this game. Big time.
Having worked on big action games, finding a way to allow someone to have like some levity or feel patient, like exploring an environment when that's not what the game, like the pillar of the game, that is so difficult. And often that's why that stuff is like, we're going to have a hub for you. Then your brain tells you like, oh, this is the place where I'm supposed to do that. But like mixing that in within a game without like doing the walk and talk or the let's take away their aim button so that they know, like without that stuff, just allowing you to go like, no, I'm in an environment where I want to stop and look around. Like it sounds hokey when people are like, oh, look at the skybox, I want to just stare off in the sunset and stuff. And that sounds goofy, and at times maybe I would roll my eyes at someone who said it, depending on how they'd say it. But when you can convince someone to do that in a game, especially a game with such a breakneck pace as Uncharted 2, God, it's like when I said earlier that I was jealous and respectful of them from the dev side of things, it's stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not just the technical stuff, but the ability, the direction in the writing, that they were able to find moments like that Oscar's using both as an example, but then explaining, like both him and Courtney are explaining like, oh, I just wanted to look around. And that felt like something that was valuable to you as a player. That is so difficult to find a way to give that moment any value at all, because usually you have to tie it to a trophy or add an Easter egg to it or something like that, or just do it, waste a bunch of time, convince a producer that it's worth this much time to hire a writer to write a bunch of crap that no one's ever going to see, and you work with a level artist to go like, hey, this is what we want with this section. Can you work with me here? Can we make this environment bigger for this reason with this kind of thing? And then go like, no one's going to see this and no one's going to appreciate it. And one guy will talk about it and he'll tweet about it and it'll make me happy, but that will be its legacy. Like, it's so hard to do that. So it's fun that you used an example like that, Oscar, because if that guy were out there listening, he'd be like, oh, you noticed it? Yes. I fought for that in 100 meetings and they told me no, but then I got my way and this guy liked it.
I love that. It's, you bring that up the point too, Mike, of the just looking around throughout the game. And I will say, like, I'm absolutely someone who was really taking in both the first game and this one, just trying to check stuff out to see what this game looked like, especially being that I missed it when it came out. Because I have so many modern comparisons in these third-person prestige action games, like a bunch of the ones that we've brought up today. So I still had fun looking at the environments, but also sort of, it's a video game, so you can spot how things are built, why they're built that way, and it's often, to propel you forward. But I still... Sightlines are important. Courtney mentioned it earlier, like a game like passively telling you what to do. Sightlines are so important, and vistas are so important, and skyboxes are important, but often they turn into like
the band playing the game behind you while you're playing Guitar Hero, where it's like kind of no consequence. And it's like, how on earth is that the case in these games? But like, you work hard on that stuff. Like, hell, even like going to Disneyland, there's a reason why in real life sightlines matter to them.
Yes.
And why video game designers often use Disneyland as not
a
Disney World,
template.
though. Disney World is terrible at sightlines. Disneyland is so good at sightlines. Both not like, if you ever go to Galaxy's Edge, count the amount of things outside of Galaxy's Edge you can see when you're inside. And when you're outside, count the number of things inside you can see. And the only things on the outside you can see from the inside are things that look like the top of Big Thunder Mountain or that look like trees you can see somewhere else. They really care about those sight lines and the idea of like the way a corner turns and the way you see something and the order you see something, stuff like that. It's easy to forget and it's easy not to realize because your brain sees it before you notice it, or your brain digests it even if you don't know what's happening. And that matters so much in games. Games use that stuff constantly. And those are the same things that you can try and use to add value or give someone patience, but it's also really easy for people to overlook. So that stuff is so, like, the people that are good at that are good at it for a reason because it's like a valuable skill.
Yeah, and I feel like from my experience playing this game, a month ago, I feel like they were very successful in that in so many places, particularly for a game where you're often being like, okay, I know they want me to get over there, but what do I got to climb to do that? And I found there were definitely moments in this game where I wasn't finding something easy or did have to do a little search, but there were also equally, if not more, moments where it felt a little more instinctual, and I think a lot of that credit does go to the design of it for sure. Speaking of which, one thing that's sort of a set piece that I wanted to bring up, which they have a little bit of this in the first game, but I loved the way they did it in this game, are the pseudo like giant puzzle rooms / temples. I loved so many of these and had fun, especially because it was a nice change of pace throughout the game, especially when I would get sometimes honestly tired of the endless firefights. Having a moment like these to stop and do a giant, sort of Indiana Jones / I was looking at them like Zelda puzzles.
Remind you about the other side of Drake. He has two things. He is a murderer and an adventurer.
and a scholar.
And
I loved his journal. I thought that was so, like, I had so much fun going through that, like going through his little like notes, and they did such a good job of throwing in things that you didn't necessarily like need to reference. Like he had like a whole page on Sully, like making fun of his mustache or whatever, and like other like little thoughts and like things that I didn't need for solving puzzles. But then it was also, I thought that was great detail, like such a good detail and such a good mechanic.
Yeah, agree wholeheartedly. Like, to echo you, Courtney, it provided a couple things, which were sometimes, a little guide to a puzzle, and other times just additional like storytelling and context or just giving you like an insight to Nathan Drake's brain of how he thinks about somebody like Sully that you brought up, which
I want to expand on that, actually.
Please.
I'm stealing this conversation real quick. The thought I noticed, Sully had like a whole page. He had 4 pictures of himself with like little notes, and in there's a teeny tiny picture of Elena. There's like a mention of Chloe, and honestly, I think the real love interest is Sully. I think their friendship is the real.
Yeah, Sully's daddy.
Sully is so daddy.
You guys really need to play Uncharted 4. I am telling you, you guys would love Uncharted 4.
Oh my God. Okay, another thing I wanted to say is that I was expecting more Sully in this.
Yes.
So I knew that the movies had come out, and Tom Holland, another thought I have is, he's kind of weird casting. Love him, but like after playing the games, I'm like, that casting's weird.
Have you seen the movie, Courtney?
No, I haven't.
Connor?
I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I actually don't hate it.
I've heard that. People are just kind of like, it's totally
Might need
it's
to
fine.
watch
It's uneven and it's got some problems, and I like Holland as a person.
Yes. Oh,
more than
my
I
God.
think he just has a baby
Protect
face.
him.
He has too
He's
much of a baby face.
and-
He's not right for the character at
Yeah,
all.
he's
Not
just
right.
he's
Yeah,
not.
he's-
It's not the right choice.
He's not who I think of when I think of like an adventuring Lothario or like a Casanova. You know,
Who's
he's
the
just a sweet
guy-
baby I want to protect.
Who's the guy who starred in Firefly?
Oh, Nathan Fillion.
Yes, that to
He
me
would have been
feels
perfect
like-
way back
Oscar,
then.
I
that
know.
is exactly who I was thinking.
But
That
they
is
look
one
He
of the
aged
similar.
out of it when he
Yeah.
started doing Fox sitcoms.
Yeah. Mhm. That's fair. They could de-age him. We have the technology now.
That's true. Now
That's
we
true.
could. Now he's
Now
perfect.
we could. So good.
Dang.
But yeah, I was expecting Sully to be a larger part because kind of the only thing I knew about Uncharted were that the movies were out and that it was Tom Holland and oh my God, what's
Wahlberg.
it? Wahlberg. And
I'm
I was
sorry,
like,
Mark Wahlberg is Sully?
Yeah.
Shaking my damn head.
Yeah, to be
What
fair,
the
again,
hell?
he does a good job. He does a good. He does a. I think he does a. He again, visually, neither him or Holland look like them, but I think both of them do a good job of playing.
Interesting.
The characters.
Because when I think
Okay.
Sully video game, I think daddy. When I think
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg in the movie, I think father. And there's
They're
a
both
big
they're
difference.
aged down quite a bit,
and
but
that's a
it works.
huge difference, you know?
Because it is also, it's not quite a prequel movie, but it's them meeting. They are supposed to be
Cute.
younger versions of the characters.
Okay.
So
Adorable.
again, don't let me feel like I'm not trying to sell you on the movie, but I am saying especially as far as video
Look,
game
someone
movies
has
go,
to. So
you could do so much worse than the Uncharted movie. It plays it a little safe. It's got a sloppy script here and there, but it has some fun stuff. It directly lifts a set piece from Uncharted 3 in a really fun way. It does some. You could do so much worse with 2 hours of your time than watch Uncharted on Netflix.
Gotcha.
Amazing.
I mean, Courtney, I think you were maybe I didn't want to lose the Sully of it all from you.
Thank you for holding on to that thread because I took it and I ran out of
Well,
thread.
it is like a thing that I also was like, where'd he go for so much of the game? Because he pops up to bail you out of jail with all of your money from the previous game that you earned. Whatever your payment, we don't need to look into it too much. Yeah, earned, stole,
Collected.
But he does that, and then he shows up, I believe, at the very end of the game as well. Am I missing that, or is that pretty
No.
much his appearance?
no, that's pretty
Nope,
much
that's it.
I
Yep.
think the reason why Sully was in the game less is to give the Chloe Elena dichotomy,
It was
love
for Chloe.
triangle.
Yeah.
It was it's an introduction of Chloe and solidifying of Elena. There was no room for Sully, unfortunately, and I guess maybe in the third one there was more room for Sully, right?
Way more Sully in the third and fourth.
Okay.
But yeah, it was clear that they wanted to, and I think I've heard Emmy Hennig talk about this, is Elena felt like a Bond girl in the first Uncharted. She's like, and it's not that dramatic, but it's along those lines. And she wanted Elena to not feel like a Bond girl. And two, she wanted Chloe, a new character, she didn't want to write Uncharted 3 and be saying the same thing about Chloe for whoever she wrote in Uncharted 3. So she's like, let's give both of them both the time and spotlight they deserve. And that meant backing up Sully a little bit as kind of like the man in the chair, the guy on the mic sort of role, and let Chloe be more important as the will they, won't they frenemy person, instead of just feeling again like a new Bond girl but a different type. And then Elena's the good Bond girl and Chloe's the bad Bond girl. Like,
Sure.
she wanted it to matter more than that. And so you look at it that way and you go like, that makes sense from a scope standpoint.
It's hard not to compare it to the Betty and Veronica dichotomy, though. Like, it is really sort of like, yes, I do love that there's more than one female character in this game, but it is a little bit like Elena's the blonde nice one and Chloe's the dark-haired bad girl, you know, and it's like, okay. I mean, I do personally, I'm team Chloe all the way. Like, I love her personality. I like her vibe. Elena's
I liked her arc also.
I like her
She
arc
had a good
too.
arc.
Yes,
yeah.
I agree. But yeah, it is just so funny. It's like, okay, this is so like typical of like romantic interest for a guy, you know?
Oh yeah. I definitely, when I started these games, I was kind of like, I was like, oh, okay, we'll see. It's 2009. Like, I am a product. I came of age in the early aughts, which was not a great time for girls in the U.S. Like, to form a sense of identity. And so I was kind of like, oh God, 2009. Like, and. Like I was a little nervous at first, but ultimately I was like, I'm stoked with both these characters. I like them. I was definitely like, when I went into it, I was like, am I only supposed to care about these women because they're love interests for Drake? Is that? And then I felt like they had enough there. I don't think it passed the Bechdel test, but that, maybe it did. I wondered that last night.
The same thing about 10 minutes ago. I was like doing all the math. I was like, do they talk about
I was like,
not
did
him?
they ever not talk about
It
Drake?
does. I don't know if you guys played this. Did you play Lost Legacy? That was the non-numbered one. You play as Chloe.
Right.
Oh, fun.
And it's Chloe and a character from Uncharted 4, and they are the main characters.
And they're
Hell
two
yeah.
women. Yeah. I mean,
And so if you like Chloe, it's like, here's Chloe, like, I don't remember within the game, but like 10, 15 years later or something. And then in Uncharted 4, there's a shitload of Elena is a main character, not just Drake's lady, not just, like, she is a character in the game. Now, I don't know where everybody sits on certain stuff, and it's been a while since I played it, so don't let me, like, oversell it. But, like, there's no Chloe in that game, and Drake has someone with him who is often Elena, and so like they are co-characters more than it feels like it's what the first game should have been, where the second game had Chloe kind of like watering things down between them both, and then this was like, nope, Elena gets to be herself instead of having to compete or having to, and a lot of it is like her relationship with Drake being this like swashbuckling guy, but not in the I sit at home while you're off having adventures way. It's less like that and more like I love you and I don't want to watch you die. I'm a part of your life, but when I'm a part of it, I'm terrified the whole time. You and I keep almost dying, and you and I keep having to move, and like there's all this stuff with like their relationship, not Drake having a girlfriend or Drake having a wife. It's them having a relationship.
Yeah, it was like, I love that. It was, I definitely was just sort of like, oh my God, like, is a romance really necessary in here? And I like that there was like fun tension and flirting without it being like, I thought it was really well written. I thought the women were really well written, and that was really exciting for me. I wasn't expecting it. I went in with low expectations. I'm not going to lie. I will say, I read something on Wikipedia a few minutes before we started recording, and that's that Elena was originally supposed to be like a softer face, like not have as pointy or like pronounced of a chin, and she was supposed to be a brunette, and then they were just like, I don't know, we just like blondes better. And I was kind of like,
what?
That's such a dumb thing that like at the time they didn't realize how bad it sounded probably.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then it said like, Elena was mostly positively received, with the exception that people had issues about like her body type and being able to physically handle all the things that she had to do. And I was like, what? For any body type, the things in the game are literally impossible. Like,
and meanwhile, like Nathan Drake is doing the craziest shit, and you're like, okay,
God,
that's a dude, that's a dude,
These guys These people need to watch wrestling and realize that, like, no, get over the fact that Daniel Bryan and Kane can have a test of strength and Daniel Bryan can win. It does not matter if the 5'6" man and the 7'2" guy are wrestling. The 5'6" man has a chance, and that counts in video games too.
Yeah, that was like okay, I'm gonna stop reading now. That's enough.
There's the 2009 for you.
It was the 2009 came out, and we were still pre 2010s. And I was like, but still, you know what? It could have gone so much worse. I think it's very obvious that like a woman had like a hand in this, and I'm so grateful for that. Genuine, because it's a great game, and I think like there are a lot of ways that it could have like soured my opinion of it, or just been like I would have been like, I'm sick of this. I'm not going to finish it. But
yeah, you don't want the Bond girls. I
don't.
I feel like. Yeah, you don't want that. That's so
I mean,
schlocky.
here's the thing: is I love James Bond movies. I love Bond movies. They're so fun, but it's like we can have a couple different versions of women. We can have a few different versions of women. I think in
and
media.
you can see a world where they mess that up. And no one says anything, right?
And no one's exactly.
And no one cares and no one talks about it. So it's nice when it doesn't happen. And still no one says anything. But like it's still nice that it happened because it didn't have to. And no one would have been like, my note is that you need to write them better. It just would have been like, yeah, cool. Yeah. Oh, she's blonde? Hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, like I just like got there and I was like, well, I'm glad I'm glad I literally don't have time to rabbit hole because we're going to record in a few minutes, but I was just like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Closing that tab.
To echo that too, Courtney, especially after the first game, which there's sort of an ambiguous relationship that Drake and Elena have, but also it felt to me to have almost no substance in that first one. Like I was, it wasn't perfect. Nothing was perfect in this game and those portrayals and those relationships, like in the triangle. But I did come out also being a little more satisfied and also just enjoying these two characters for what they brought to the table. It does feel like Chloe is a better fit for Nathan Drake. And the meta in my head is like, oh, well, of course he would make I don't know if safe is the right word, but like convenient choice as happens in our world all the time. But I still don't think that satisfied me to be in my meta narrative.
I want you guys to play Uncharted 4. So bad. I know I keep saying that, but I just really want all of you guys to play Uncharted 4.
If he's not holding hands with Sully by credits, I'm going to be so disappointed.
I won't say a word.
What I want to highlight one quick thing too, and that is, I know I kind of spoke on this earlier before I sort of pivot and open it up a little more in our last, 20 minutes or so.
I like how you're like, can you guys tell me about your set piece? And then we all talked for 7 hours. It's like, well, I asked one question. Show's almost over.
No, the great thing about truly this whole discussion is that like we're touching on many of the topics that I think compose this game by starting off from a jumping off point. And these episodes, like we do an overview episode, not to touch every detail, but to get a nice swath. So I love it. The only thing I was like, I have to highlight this is the sort of ice cavern is the way I'll describe it. Sort of like puzzle dungeon with Tenzin. Tenzin is a character which I think that I haven't looked at see how people feel. There also might be complicated feelings about Tenzin's portrayal, possibly, but I thought it was I love the temple itself. It really felt like I was doing, as a big Zelda fan, a nice Zelda puzzle. I also like the one earlier in the game where you're climbing up like spires in this sort of golden temple. Really feels like an Ocarina Spirit temple. But the Tenzin stuff where Drake just keeps like talking at him in English, and they seem to have a good rapport, but the whole time I was like, you just keep shouting Tenzin at him. Like, what is he supposed to do? But that whole area where it spins up with I didn't expect another supernatural mystery to be in this game, which I should have, because they established that in the first game. But that's the first area where you sort of get a taste of this mysterious like Yeti thing. And I guess I should just understand that the supernatural or like unexplained mystery that then has some sort of an explanation is just a part of the series. Is that sort of
it's very Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones does that. Indiana Jones is very grounded in its reality.
Yeah.
Except they use that as why they can then unground it, but in very specific times and places, excluding the originally worst movie and then the now worst movie, which are the last two. Where they don't know what they're doing and they're like, whatever, aliens and time travel, who cares about anything? But like they're very good in the first three Indiana Jones movies about like, where do we take our occult stuff and our magic and our fantasy? Where do we pluck it out? And they're very, very smart about saying it is rooted in the old stories and there's a hint and a seed of that thing that exists, so like the Yetis and like in the first one the zombies and stuff like that. I think they're very, very smart about when and how they use it, and that is kind of a theme they continue on. I don't remember. I think they play around with the idea in 4 more differently, but in general, they play with that, and I feel like they follow the same rules that Indiana Jones does: is don't do it too much, and make sure you give yourself a set of rules and then follow them. And if you do that, it should work out, and people will buy it and take it seriously. Because the Yetis surprise you, but I never felt like, wait, is this a different game? What reality is this taking place in? Like, it reminded me of like finding any of the magical things, the list of magical things in Indiana Jones. Who are like, oh, this is an exception, but it can only be an exception because it is the exception.
Yes,
and they do that in Uncharted. They make sure it is a exception, or else you start wondering.
Not a series of exceptions.
Yeah. So am I just supposed to believe there's monsters in this world? Like, what is this world?
Yeah, that's
there's a couple of things I want to say about like the supernatural element to this game. Number one, the fact that the supernatural element of the game is that there's these guardians that like consume the sap of the tree of life and then turn into these blue-hued weirdos, but then they dress in a Yeti costume to scare people. But it's like, why are you dressing up as a Yeti costume when you are in fact scary looking already?
Yeah, you're scarier than the Yeti.
Exactly. You are way scarier than the Yeti.
I had that thought, and my brain was thinking, because the Yeti costume, wasn't that outside of... That was like outside of Shambhala. And so I wonder if it was like, oh, let's preserve our identity, and we'll play into this is, again, me inventing this at 10 p.m. last night. Where
that tracks to me. That
where
makes
it was
sense.
like, oh, the Yetis are outside of Shambhala as like guardians, so that if people encounter them, they're not just like big blue guys, that there's like a level of
I thought the
security.
same thing. I think
this sounds like a Disney Channel original movie logic a little bit.
I think you're right. That's exactly
what
I thought.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's either symbolic or ancestral, or just like, we need to make sure that they stay away, so we'll look like an animal, even if they're not saying, oh, they know what Bigfoot is, let's dress up like that. It's more that we know what Bigfoot is because we saw them dressed up like that, and it kind of makes sense that way. So I think you nailed it, Courtney.
Yeah, I also think that there's an element too with the supernatural stuff that is so prevalent in Indiana Jones, is that like the metaphor of the unknown as magical or dangerous, right? Like these are white men going into cultures and civilizations that are have like cultural stuff happening that is very tied to like powers that in Western civilization we're not familiar with or we have forgotten about. That is so normal to them that to a Western audience is seen as mystifying or supernatural, you know? And that is the Western implication of other cultures. It's like, oh, this is what happens. This is scary equals this is, I can't understand it. So it's
like dangerous, or
it's dangerous and bad and creepy.
Yeah.
You know,
Treating their
othering.
folklore as history.
Yes.
As opposed to folklore, where like, hey, in the West, religion stuff is treated very differently than like in Japan, where they're almost like cartoon characters to a lot of people. Like they are characters. They're not meant to be looked at and worshipped the same way. And so, but from the West, you'd look at it and go like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like this is how everyone I've ever been around worships some type of deity like figure. But over there, they're like, no, that's completely different. So it's the same thing. We look at their folklore and go, they really believe that, like as if it was like in a history book or something. It's like, no. We have dumb folklore stuff too, but we don't think of that as history. But why are we projecting that on their folklore as if it's supposed to be taken at face value?
It's like if they came here expecting there to be a giant lumberjack and a big blue ox.
Exactly.
You know? Like, where's that game?
yeah, big time.
Taking
gosh,
notes.
that's
I got a
interesting
treatment I'm
though.
gonna write.
You got both your points out about the supernatural, right, Oscar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I want to touch on one little element that I think we've danced around slightly, and then open it up to everyone for some anything we haven't shared that if anyone has something they're really excited to talk about, and that is just the gameplay improvement that I really felt in this game. I felt this in both the combat and the platforming. We were just kind of having a discussion about sort of not the suspension of disbelief, but like what were we talking about, like power?
Ludonarrative dissonance,
something to do with ludonarrative dissonance maybe. And it's just like the believability of this game. You have to suspend some disbelief when you're playing this game, and and that's okay. That felt okay to me to realize that, if I'm gonna buy into this, like, it's okay that Drake is jumping 3 stories down and 30 feet across and grabbing onto something. I think it gets a little tricky at moments because we are in such a quote unquote grounded world where sometimes I felt myself bumping up against certain moments in the game. And I think personally that could have been solved by having, honestly, this is how I felt in some areas, a gap be like just 5 feet less. I think I would have felt a little less like, his body kind of flailed weird to catch the end of it. When if you just make the distance a little shorter, and I know it's not that simple in designing a game, maybe that would have felt better. So I just wanted to say that some of that bumped for me. That being said, I loved the improved gameplay, both platforming and the combat too. I don't think the combat is like leaps and bounds better than the first, but I liked it. And I also liked the spread of weapons and found more things that I think more of like, I'm sure, what am I trying to say here? Like go-tos in the game. Like if I found certain weapons, I had my go-tos, but the game I felt encouraged me slightly better than the first one to try different things, as opposed to leaning on what my strengths or my comfort zone weapons in the first. Gameplay wise too, I just kind of wanted to open that up to you all. Oscar, do you have any thoughts on the gameplay in Uncharted 2?
It's better than the first one, but to be perfectly honest, not the reason to play the game. To me, like this kind of gameplay, I'm like not a big fan of. I'm not very familiar with this kind of gameplay. There's a neatness to it that I really like at the very beginning, which is like you hide, you shoot, you there's stealth. It's like really good stealthy game. And then you get to the Yeti part and that feels way more chaotic in a way that I was like, whoa, nothing's prepared. You're just like running and shooting at these Yetis because they're coming at you.
I'm mashing dodge, hoping that I do dodge.
Exactly. Yeah. So in that way, I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect for me. But the gameplay was better, but not perfect.
Gotcha.
I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I would say that the camera was a lot better on the second, like leaps and bounds. Like I was really, that was like honestly my biggest peeve, and the thing I remember disliking the most about the first game is that the camera felt so limited, and I already like struggle enough with that. And then jumping into the second one, I was like, this is so much smoother. This has like, there's like, it just felt way more manageable. So that was big for me. Also, took me a minute to get used to the grenades, but then I got really good at them, and that was extremely satisfying. I loved finding like any opportunity that I could like throw a grenade. I was like,
yeah, I can't put my finger on it, but there was a difference. You and I both just played these back to back, basically. I don't remember what the difference is in, button presses to throw between games, but Courtney, I also like got in a real groove with grenade tosses in this one.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun. Also, I'm always a sucker for a shotgun. They're just so satisfying. There's any game, Doom specifically. I think that's where it all started for me.
Super Shotgun and Doom is
so good. So good.
Halo Shotgun.
Me, really.
Halo Shotgun's another classic.
Oh yeah.
If there's a shotgun, I'm like, yay, a shotgun.
Mike, any gameplay thoughts from you while we're here?
What I'll do is I'll wrap 3 things together. I talked so much during everybody else's set piece that I realized I never set a set piece. So I'll marry 3 things together. I will marry my talk about how good they are at sightlines and design set piece, and upgrades from the last game. So rather than focusing on better or worse, what I think I can say about the difference between 1 and 2's gameplay is that 2's is more dynamic. Everything about it is more dynamic. In the first game, it felt like hallways that were shooting with the occasional thing you're doing, where 2 felt like both the environments were more complicated, but the things you were doing in them were more involved. So it was not just stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. And I think the best example of this is you can almost call the entire level a boss fight, but the crumbling building with the helicopter, that is, in my opinion, that's the best set piece in the game. Our boy Cowboy McIntosh also responsible for that.
Yeehaw.
People were yeehaw indeed. People were blown away by that, and I think that is the perfect example of all of these things, because that is not a hallway you're walking through. Nothing about that level is straightforward, even within Uncharted standards, because it is very vertical as opposed to being very horizontal. And it's not momentum based because you're not doing one thing for a long time that slowly scales up. You're doing a series of different things in rapid succession. So you're mixing your climbing with your shooting on buildings, shooting off of buildings, climbing through buildings, outside of buildings, inside of buildings. You're doing all of those things together. Your environment is constantly changing as the set piece starts happening where the building is falling down around you. And that's where it wraps into how good they were with the sight lines. Because I don't know about you guys, but think about just not even designing that game. None of us are programmers. None of us are artists. You're not even doing that. Think about describing to someone how they would navigate an environment that complicated while it's moving, while it's changing. What do you even say? How do you do that? So imagine then having to interpret that visually with no words. And what they're doing is putting you in a space that works both on a vertical and horizontal plane, because it's constantly moving, changing, rolling. And you're never like, oh, it wanted me to run forward? Oh, I didn't know that. Or, oh, it wanted me to jump here? Or, oh, I'm supposed to go out that window? Or I'm supposed to go across this? Or, oh, this is where the fighting's happening? Or, oh, the stuff's about you're very rarely running into that to the point where you don't even think about it. And you're like, how on earth did I know what to do during that entire section? And I knew where to go. The game was like diegetically feeding that information directly into my brain without an arrow pointing me or a check marker or an objective chevron somewhere in the distance. Like none of that stuff was there. And that was them. Basically, that is the perfect marriage of their technical prowess, their design prowess, and then taking their gameplay and making it way more dynamic. Whether it's better or worse, like Oscar said, it's not necessarily better because all the verbs are the same. You're climbing, you're running, you're shooting, you're taking cover. Almost all of your gameplay verbs remain the same between Uncharted 1 and Uncharted 2, but the way you're doing them is less of a straight line and stuff is happening. So I feel like dynamic is why I keep using that word. So like it or hate it, no one can deny that it is a much more involving, engrossing, dynamic experience when you do all of those same things in the game. And I think that's what makes this game so impressive, is that you look at the first one and so often you play a game and you're like, wouldn't it be cool if they did this? Wouldn't it be cool if they did that? Oh, wouldn't it be great if this happened? And you think of promise and you think of the fictional reality, and then very rarely do all of those things and more become reality. And in Uncharted 2, everything you wanted or could have hoped for to be improved basically got improved, even in ways you didn't even know were possible in Uncharted 2. And that's kind of everything you want in a sequel. It's like I compared it to Mass Effect 2 earlier, and I feel like that's another game that successfully does the same thing. But I think that's what's impressive about Uncharted 2 is taking all of those things, gameplay, design, narrative, technicality, all of them, and just pushing them forward into a more dynamic version of themselves from compared to the first game.
Yeah.
Sorry. No. Whenever I talk about games from like that side, I get very in the weeds. So I apologize if I was using a bunch of stupid video game words.
You're good. That had my brain spinning, Mike. And I think I'll sort of spin us into like final thoughts about the game and last words basically. And because you reminded me of one thing I wanted to share about this. You know, having come into the first 2 games, and it's so hard for me not to compare 2 to 1 and also, but at the same time sort of lump them in as one experience, having played them basically in like both in 2.5 weeks, just like binged them. And having come into it, having, you know, a decent amount of experience with a future Naughty Dog title or series in The Last of Us and seeing where that series went, and a predecessor in Jak and Daxter, and also, you know, dabbled with Crash as a kid, seeing the threads from this studio and how these games were made and how they evolved was so fascinating to me. It's more of an observation than an opinion that I have, but whether it be the facial animations of the Jak and Daxter first title, the precursor legacy, and then playing Uncharted 1 and 2, I felt like I was seeing similar personality traits in the characters, and that's probably just based on the animation team or the rigs they use or whatever, but I felt like I saw those threads. And then in Uncharted 1, 2, to The Last of Us, seeing these things that Mike is bringing up, like how gameplay became, and just the world became more dynamic and allowing for, to use another buzzword, I think like emergent gameplay moments, like you do experience in The Last of Us, of you have a destination, but there are multiple routes and strategies you can use to get there. I found so fascinating. But seeing these 2 games, and of course the ones I've missed, as like a bridge in this like Naughty Dog legacy was just a fascinating experience for me recently. I have so many like misses in my gaming career of series I've just never touched. And how had I never touched this one before this year? Mass Effect is a new one to me in the last 3 years. Genuinely thanks to Mike, like encouraging me to buy the whatever the collection
Legendary
is.
collection, yeah.
Yes. Anyway, my final thought is that I really enjoyed this experience. It's by no means my favorite game of all time. By no means a game that like I don't like, and it's one I will, I think, return to for fun and continue the series. It's honestly, I have such a milquetoast take, which is like, I really enjoyed this, and it's more like seeing its place in history was fascinating for me. Courtney, I'd love to turn to you. Do you have sort of like, if there's something you haven't brought up about this game, feel free. If not, feel free to wrap up your thoughts.
Okay, I do wish I had given myself a little more time to like marinate between finishing the game and doing this podcast. Yeah. Because my thoughts last night as I finished it, there's an interaction towards the end between Chloe and Drake, and the debate is like, get Lazario or like, just what was it? Destroy the tree? But I was just kind of like, I wish I was kind of like, wouldn't it be so cool if you got to pick? Like, I know on like the game creator's side, that is that's a big undertaking.
Any choice
for sure.
Making a choice in a video game, it's like, all right, do we have 6 months for someone? And it's like, God. That's one choice.
But I like in my head, I was like, oh, I wish I got to choose, as opposed to like, don't get me wrong, I would not. That's so much work to ask a studio. But in my head, I was kind of like, that's like such an interesting. That would have been an interesting choice to make that I would have been really into.
Yeah.
And as someone who doesn't make games, that's very easy for me to say. But I remember just being like, oh, I wish I got to choose right here. I wish like that was, because for me, I would have like taken out Lazario. I would have shot him. I wouldn't have let I was like, come on, you killed him like a bajillion goons. Take this guy out. Like,
what's
like,
one
if
more
anything,
goon?
What's one more guy? Just take him out. And like, I don't know, I would have like wanted to preserve this ancient civilization that's like kept to itself. I've been like, peace. Sorry guys, we got up in your space, tried to steal some stuff from you. Our bad. That would have been my personal choice. But to each his own. That's fine. That was sort of my biggest thought. But also like, I feel like that's a thing that I'm going to be like sitting and mulling over for a bit.
Yes. Gotcha. And then just that being your sort of final thought, tidbit that you wanted to share. Leaving this experience, Courtney, you've given us so much on this episode of like your impression. How would you wrap up your feelings?
I would wrap up my feelings by saying I was genuinely surprised that I enjoyed this game as much as I did. And I feel like that is a recurring theme with me where I'm just like, I don't think I'll like that. I'm going to stick to these little card games that I like to play. And then my world gets opened up. I'm like, what the heck? This game was good. And I feel like a real slow loke. And people are like, yeah. Like, we've literally been saying that for 15 years. I'm like, Uncharted 2 was good. And people are like... You made it. Welcome. So yeah, maybe the note for me is to be a little more open-minded. But yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised, and also it's a lovely experience to play it on easy mode.
Lovely. Well, I'm glad you did, and I'm glad that you joined us. Lastly, Oscar Montoya, here you are. Did you have anything you didn't get to say about this game today?
No.
Okay. Well, in that case, would you wrap up, having played this game in the past and coming back to it, what do you have to say, leaving this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, like, your whole journey of, like, sequels, right? This is one of the big ones, yeah? This is, like, one of the major ones where it really is faster, stronger, better, et cetera, in terms of, like, growth from the first game to the second one. The first game had so much potential for something big, and what it accomplished was tremendous, but 2 really added a cinematic flair to it that made it so incredible. The waves this game made in just popular culture and gaming in general, it legitimized, I hate to say it because I've been a ride or die gamer my whole life, but it legitimized gaming to the noobs out there who are not familiar with the magic that games can hold. And it made like a different, like, it like changed people's perceptions of what video games can be. It opened up a whole new avenue of gamers coming into games in the first place, which is so exciting because, listen, there's a video game for every kind of person. Someone who's like, I'm not into video games is a fucking liar. And I won't stand for that because there is. And with this game, it opened up the mainstream of like, oh, I don't have to be good at first person shooters. I don't have to be like a really smart, like, puzzle player. Like it is like, I'm just going to play this on easy mode and enjoy the ride. And that's what it was. It was great. A couple of things that I want to point out in terms of this specific genre of games, since it's mimicking Lara Croft, is it Tomb Raider and Indiana Jones. The villain of this, which we didn't really get to talk about that much,
that's right.
To me is cool. I mean, they talk a lot about how smart he is, but he just looks like a big bad European man, which I wish they could showcase a little bit more of his intelligence in the game. But yeah, he is smart, I guess. But it plays, I think I would, if I had to give any final thoughts about notes, I wish we could push further the tropes of what it means to be, because when I think bad guy in an Indiana Jones movie, I think about this guy. You know what I mean? When I think of like the Bond girl Elena, if I think about like sort of the Lilith character, the Delilah character, the Mary Magdalene character, I think, you know what I mean? Like that's who I'm thinking of. So it gives you things that you're comfortable with, so you don't question it, so you're just playing the game. But there's a piece of me, like playing this game recently, being like, oh, I wish we could challenge some of those notions that we have. But you know what? Maybe they do that in Uncharted 4. So
Uncharted 4. Uncharted 4.
I guess my biggest takeaway is play Uncharted 4.
There we are.
It is the first Uncharted game they made after they made Last of Us. And so like it and the team that made Last of Us made that, as opposed to just the Naughty Dog team that was working primarily on Uncharted. So, and you will see that DNA.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for our discussion on Uncharted 2 So much more we could have talked about. So much more we could have dove into. But I would love to hear the what?
More chickens. We got to do a side stories.
We're doing
just about the chickens.
Probably about another hour and a half episode just on them. This has been such a blast. I've loved having you, all three of you, on. Before we go and I plug some stuff about the network and whatnot, I'd love to get plugs for wherever you folks would like to be found on the internet. Mike Steele, Mr. Six-Timer himself. What do you want to plug while you're here today, Mike? Where can people find you?
I'm kind of like the Tom Brady of Call Me By Your Game, aren't I?
In so many ways, you are
need to use
just
both
like
hands
Tom
now.
Brady. Yeah, that's true.
So what I will say is, Connor, I adore you. I adore video games. I love video games. And what fuels me to play video games is the Mr. Beast Feastable bar. There's a brand new flavor. It is peanut butter. It is rich. It is delicious. It's amazing. And when you're gaming and you need that little extra something to take on the hard boss at the end of the game, maybe you should grab a Mr. Beast Feastable bar. That's just my personal opinion, Connor.
Yes.
So I am in between studios. The last couple times I've been on a game, I pitched the game I'm working on.
Yes.
But I have been a victim of the so there's this thing where when you work on video games, you get laid off no matter what. All the time, every day. No one actually works on games because we're all laid off. So I don't have a game that I can say I am currently working on, but I will say video games are awesome and you should be playing them, whether it's Balatro and you're I knew you'd like Balatro, Courtney, or it's Uncharted 4 or the newest Madden game. Like that, there's this giant swath, like Oscar said, of games. So do yourself a favor and play a weird game that you didn't like normally play, and I bet you'll find something that will broaden your horizon. And maybe next time I'm on, one of those games will be a game I'm working on. But there you go, Connor.
We're gonna make that happen, whether it's me or some little angel out there, Mike. It's gonna happen. Mike, as always, thanks for being here, buddy. I love talking games with you.
Thank you, Connor. I love you to death.
Oh, I love you too. Courtney Vineys, wow, we've done it again. Braving into a new game for the both of us. What do you want to plug? Where can people find you, Courtney?
Cool. You can find me streaming video games on Twitch, twitch.tv/Cortenberry. My social media, don't bother. It's not going to be interesting unless you know me. I can't stress that enough. I don't know. Like, don't worry about it. Just Twitch, and we can chat. It'll be great. That's all.
I love it. Well,
I guess other than that, if you like hearing my voice, you can hear it in Hades, and also Hades 2. This is, I think, the first time I can say that.
Wow.
Not can, or have had
shit,
the opportunity
you're that
to say
Courtney?
I'm that Courtney. Hi, Mike.
So, oh my God. So I worked with Supergiant. I worked at Private Division for a little bit, and we did the console version of Hades when it went out.
Oh my God.
I didn't realize this whole time I've had no idea.
That's so funny. Oh wow.
That's
you
weird.
know me.
Oh my God.
But yeah, and
Wait,
I will
Courtney,
be
who did you do a voice for?
In Hades, I was Dusa and Aphrodite, and in Hades 2, I am Aphrodite.
Woo! Everyone loves Dusa. Oh,
The
I'm so glad I didn't know.
Little goose ever, Dusa. I just started playing Hades 2 months ago.
Dude,
Oh my
if I would have
gosh!
known, the whole show would have just been me doing this. So I'm glad I didn't know.
and that's a fun little surprise for the end, isn't it?
Oh, it just
Wow.
that's for the true fans who stuck around to the end.
I love it. And next year, not to preview too much because we haven't even picked what we're going to do next year. I know everyone knows we're doing sequels for this year's Call Me By Your Game co-op series. Next year, we're doing indie games. Also kind of up to my discretion, but I'm going to try to stick to as much of straight up indie titles because I kind of want to play Dave the Diver, and I know it's not an indie game, but I might fudge
Here's
numbers.
the thing, Connor. Indie means it doesn't matter if a big giant studio technically owns your studio. If your team is an indie team, your game counts as an indie game. It's fine.
Oh, there's your sticker. Thank you, Mike. Courtney, but we have talked about playing a Supergiant game next year. I know we're between a couple, but we'll be in touch. I'll have to invite all three of you back for at least one episode. Courtney, thanks for plugs. Oscar, hey, on your way out, what do you want to plug?
Hi. What do I want to plug? I co-host a Eurovision Song Contest podcast called Eurovangelists on the Max Fun Network, and you can follow us on Instagram at Eurovangelists. It's fun, we just talk about the dumb little contest. We're three Americans who are obsessed with this European pageantry of ridiculousness. It's very fun, and also you can follow me on social media at Ozzymo, Ozzymo, for stuff. And follow me there, I guess. Also, one last thing. Mr. Beast, if you're listening, give Mike some money on his damn birthday.
Give him the money.
He's been doing so much work for you.
It's coming.
It's from the heart. I forget that guy exists sometimes. It's just from the heart, You gotta just. I want people to know about the things I love.
He really needs the promo too. Well, Oscar, thank you for promoting. Thank you all for being here. I'll just go ahead and close us out with some plugs of my own. The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by the artist Glenn J. You can find him and his other great work on Instagram at Glenn with 2 N's.JAY. The show is produced, edited, and the music that you'll hear up top and at the end is done by the great Jeremy Schmidt. You should thank him for his work on this show by checking out his podcast, Video Games, a comedy show. You can also follow this podcast wherever you get social media: Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, or YouTube if you don't already. If you're an audio listener, check us out on YouTube. This episode, all the co-op episodes, while the audio is exclusive to Patreon, the video releases a week later for everyone because I want people to be able to hear this. So check it out on YouTube. You can also follow the network at Super NPC Radio everywhere. If you're not already a patron and you like hearing me talk to people about video games and want a backlog of a jillion episodes, check us out on patreon.com/Super NPC Radio. There's different podcasts offered at different tiers. You can follow me all over social media. Everything we plugged today is going to be in a beautiful, organized list in the show notes, whether you're watching on YouTube or on a podcast catcher somewhere in the future. But that'll do it for another episode of the Call Me By Your Game co-op series. We'll see you next month for The Secret of Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge. I'll see you on the next one.